Hey, this is Jimmy Jive, and you're listening to Motor City Rock Talk. Today, my guest is from a Detroit metropolitan area band who's played several bars and clubs in the area and surrounding areas. They're called the Picassos. Today, my guest is the lead guitarist, as I said, and lead vocalist Charles Urban. How you doing today, bud?
I'm doing all right. Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
No problem, man. Let's start out with a little background. Give me a little background on where you're from originally and pretty much what got you into this style of music.
Yeah. Well, I grew up a little ways away from Port Huron and heavily involved in like marching bands, started playing drums there, kind of had an affinity for rhythm, worked my way into the drama department, so stage theater is a bit baked in the DNA of things. And that in the community theater is actually where I met the bass player, Dan.
Okay.
So the two of us were involved in theater for a while. But all the while, I'm getting into alternative music and inspired by the likes of like Smashing Pumpkins or Depeche Mode, stuff like that all throughout middle school, high school, and just kind of ran with it from there. Started trying to write music on our own in a couple different kind of defunct projects over the years, but ultimately just trying to play out wherever we can and eventually forming into what became the proper Picassos, I guess, over the last couple of years. I started out as a solo act because, as I said, I played drums. So I would accompany myself on acoustic guitar with a homemade suitcase kick drum setup with a tambourine. So I'd be like a one-person band. I often call it I still do it from time to time, depending on the venue, but we call it a skeleton band setup. So that kind of easier to get out on a short notice without practicing,
right,
more or less. But eventually, from doing that and kind of founding the initial ideas of what I'd want a band to be, I called it Picassos in the idea of it being a collaborative effort to get other musicians with me. Eventually, circa early 2018, roughly, hard to say exactly, but with Thorin, our now official drummer, and getting Dan back into the mix, we have been kind of ever growing since. Found a keyboard player along the way, Joe, and this has been the most prolific of our sounds and what it is now.
Oh, okay, well that's cool. So officially the Picassos started around 2018, because I noticed from Spotify and checking out your albums that you have out, I think the first one came out in 2022 and then you had another one in 2023. That's a lot of material in a short span of time. Had you been working on it for quite a while and just decided to put those two albums out separately?
Oh yeah, so a lot of the material stuff that I've been working and tinkering with in like solo settings, demoing on my own, and then bringing it to the group is usually where it really becomes what it's meant to be. So prior to recording and releasing any of that, I kind of had a bit of a backlog of beta tested bits of what I think would make sense for a band, or what I thought the sound was going to be. And even if you go back a little further, technically we released an EP called The Picassos and Other Scary Stories that we released for Halloween in 21, I believe.
Oh, okay.
And that was the most sophisticated outing at that point in time. And then we had kind of previously recorded some stuff and put it out, and then retroactively fitted it and remastered it, and that's what you see on Exhumed for 2022. And then last year's Divination Scars is really the full magnum opus of our full-length record, which we put out then.
Now, is your stuff, other than being in the streaming service format, did you put any of this stuff out on like CDs or whatever that you guys sell online, or sell at your shows?
Yeah, we have everything. All three releases right now are on CD, available at I believe on our website right now. Primarily just do business in person at our seances as it is.
Now, you call it seances? Is that a reference to your shows?
That is what we call any performances.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool. The other thing that I had read about you guys, and doing a little background, was, you mentioned Smashing Pumpkins. From the look of the band, and from what I've heard, most of the feedback I've heard was you guys would have been more or less kind of like The Cure. Was there any influence there, or was that kind of just because of the style?
I think it's funny because I appreciate The Cure very much. I think just because I was blessed with the head of hair that I have, that people have made the connection between me and Robert Smith, and I'll take it 100%. It's an honor every time.
Sure.
If it turned out he was actually my long lost relative, I'd be happy to. But yeah, I appreciate that, and I like the wider dark music as it is.
Right.
But The Cure was always kind of I knew some of their material, but it wasn't something that I went out to try to emulate in any way.
Speaking of which, I'm just wondering, as far as your style of music, if you could give me your definition of what goth, as far as music, really means, or how it stands out.
To me, because I feel like I've kind of really dove in throughout the course of me understanding music and finding affinity for the dark stuff and the various genres and subgenres that exist now. To me, the things that are always focal are the subject matter, and it being like finding a beauty in the dark, finding relevance and comfort in the obscure or strange, odd references, literary motifs. These are all things that I try to work into my own material, and to me, that's what's indicative of a goth style, rather than any particular music genre or effects or things of that nature. I think there's a longing, there's a hauntedness, something that I always aspire to and feel a lot of home with anything that has a lot of reverb, or you feel like you could hear it in the bottom of a cave.
Okay, that's an interesting.
That is really where I find my home.
Now, do you think the dress and the look of it, has anything to do with the music too, or does that just go hand in hand? I
think it goes hand in hand, but it's it's the individual. It's how you want to be perceived. If you find comfort in the dark, well, yeah, I'm gonna dress like it's pitch black out.
Right.
I think you can see a lot of influence back and forth. I think it's fascinating, really, when you get into the influence from movies. Like you go far as back as Nosferatu or Caligari, and you see that style, that dramatic makeup, and then having that influence the music of the late 70s, early 80s with that movement that started happening then of people finding these visuals and then taking it on their own and making it into fashion. So it goes back and forth, which is wild because you see movies now being inspired by musicians who were inspired by movies and vice versa. And I think it's kind of a never-ending cycle that we get to experience and flow with, and that's a huge influence for me. A lot of movies, horror films, and the fantastic and macabre.
Are you versed or into Edgar Allan Poe? Because a lot of Edgar Allan Poe stuff was obviously a little bit on the dark side, and into that.
Oh, yes. Big fan. I appreciate any storytelling, and that's something that inspires me lyrically and stuff that I want to try to tell my own stories and motifs of that. There's a few pretty obvious references on the most recent release of Under the Floorboards, The Telltale Heart, no less. Yeah, it's definitely in there.
And as far as recording the music or performing it live, do you guys use any kind of tapes, accompany kind of tapes, or intro music to set the scene? Because most of the pictures I've seen and stuff, you guys are got that look. Do you use that live also, as far as any tapes or any kind of fact?
I always like to. We used to have something of a volume pedal with some Vincent Price storytelling going on in between tracks. Since kind of got retired when we were able to when we afforded our keyboardist, who was talented enough to really vamp between any takes, so it kind of took the place of anything necessary. But yeah, I love to work that kind of stuff into it, samples and little audio files and whatever really makes sense for the song or the music. On occasion, we'll have a projector set up and play some old silent films while we're playing, and that's always my favorite.
Oh, that's cool.
Add even more visual interest.
Now, the other band that I would have thought may have been an influence on you in a way because of the dark side in some sense would have been Black Sabbath. Were you into Black Sabbath at all? Did that cultivate in any of this?
I know Dan, my bass player, is quite interested in metal, and that was stuff that he grew up on too until he got into the punk stuff. But yeah, I always appreciate Ozzy. I always appreciate the Black Sabbath motif and the things that they brought into it. So that's a great parallel, and I'm happy to take it if that's what you're familiar with our stuff.
And so, do you try and more or less present yourself in a very theatrical way? It's like Cooper did a lot of that kind of stuff. Not just forming the music, but, props on stage, certain lighting. Do you go along with all that?
Oh, huge. Yeah. That's always the biggest thing to me is to make it's not just a performance. We want it to be an experience. And that's why everything to me is the seance of it all. So we'll bring on candles on stage, or electric, of course, because the fire marshals get upset at venues. We try to make sure the lighting is just enough to give us that ambiance and have the candles lit. Any other stage props, we've done like funeral displays of florals and other things that make sense for what we're trying to pull off. And really, whenever we can decorate the space, we try to.
I see. Now, is any of you keep mentioning this as a dark side type of thing, trying to find the goodness in the dark side and all that. Is any of this related to, let's say, black magic or paranormal type of material?
We're all firm believers in the paranormal. We've had experiences, and a lot of it does kind of find its way into my output. Had plenty of ghostly, haunting experiences in the places I've lived, kind of inspired some of the material. But ultimately, yeah, we're just trying to... I know that some of us use tarot cards, but I don't think any of us are exactly occult practitioners at this point. I'm fascinated by the subject, and it's something that I'm always learning about and reading and trying to find new ways to be inspired.
Have you guys, outside the band or anything, as you keep mentioning also the word seance, been involved in any of that kind of stuff? And that fascinates me too. My wife and I watch all the ghost shows, wondering if half of it's real or half of it's fake. And if you've been into that or seen that, are you saying then that some of that will play its way into your writing?
It does, yes. I think this is the nature of a performance in which you're trying to invoke people to have a singular goal, or will like to engage the audience to sing along with us, or just join hands. And that in itself, I find, the workings of a seance.
Right.
Call out, and we hope that we're making some kind of connection. And in the past, we have had particular strange occurrences at events when everyone does join together, and then we'll notice something falls out or a light burns out or something unexplained happens. And that's when we know we've really hit something, when there's some success. That's
interesting. That's very interesting. Where are some of the clubs? Because I imagine with this kind of a scenario and this kind of look and presentation, you'd have to have a decent sized stage to pull it off properly. Where are some of the places that you guys have played or would play regularly?
Oh yeah, we are big fans of the Ghost Light and Hamtramck, no less. So that's a staple for sure. Any of the Hamtramck venues, like Sanctuary, of course. Mm-hmm. We've gotten into the Blind Pig in Ann Arbor, a historic place. So a lot of interesting feelings and vibes there. Yeah, we've had a lot of fun at the Tangent Gallery. Just any place that you have a nice stage and the ability to really stretch out and kind of create that whole space and take it over is really what we're after.
So have you ever played any, like, what people would consider in the paranormal community, like haunted theaters or anything like that? Tried to do something like that? Like, for example, the old Redford Theater.
Yeah, I love that place. Saw a film there not too long ago. Yeah, that would be amazing if we could actually find a space like that. I know we're actually looking at, or we are set to play the historic Masonic Temple in Bay City.
Oh, wow.
So it's one of the Masonic temples, and I believe it's 130-year-old building. So a lot of talk about that. So I'm interested to know what's going to happen when we start cooking. So that could be a night to remember, of course.
And some of the other places that I could recommend and stuff, because in my band we had some weird experience. Some of the actual, like, not clubs per se, but like Odd Fellows Club.
Oh, yeah.
Some of those that have been around for a long time that, you'd have to throw your own party or whatnot there. But my band, we played a couple times at Odd Fellows places and had some weird stuff going on with the lights and this and that too. And we weren't even going for that effect. Have you thought of doing something like that? Have you ever done anything like that?
Oh, we'd love to. Yeah, we do a lot of photography in cemeteries too. Mm-hmm. So that sort of thing is up our alley. But that would be amazing. Any place like that, we're completely open. I'll do an occasional solo one-off at the Raven Coffee House in Port Huron, and that used to actually be an occult bookstore.
Really?
So there's a lot of talk that place has some interesting energy too. So really, we're always trying to expand and grow and try new things, and wherever it's a little strange.
Nothing wrong with that, you know. As far as the CD, where exactly did you guys record those?
Well, we're actually very fortunate that our drummer Thorin is also production sound tech, so we do everything on our own.
Oh, cool.
In-house in the home studio that we've been able to record everything there, and then work it out and mix it and master some of the older stuff. But more recently we had outsourced the final mastering process just to get another pair of hands on the wheel here.
Sure.
But yeah, we've been very fortunate that we're able to demo and record on our own essentially and keep our own time for it.
Well, that's very cool. The other thing, I guess, involving that, because they're again one of my bands, the ones I had mentioned already, played the Oddfellows. We recorded in the studio, but we brought in stuff. Now, do you find it, or have you done this when you go into this guy's studio or whatever, set the mood in the studio as far as lighting and this and that, to get you in the mood to play it, or is that just strictly for the show?
I insist usually. If I can, I'll bring my own candles and incense and make sure that it can't deal with the bright lights.
Right.
So whatever it takes to kind of bring the space to the right level, I guess.
Yeah, the atmosphere.
Yeah, that's really it. To try to capture that and try to find where the performance is going to be, and hopefully that comes across in the recordings.
Yeah, you would think it would. I mean, is everybody pretty much on board with that as far as recording, or does anybody ever say, hey, let's keep it separate, keep this more at this level?
It takes a little convincing, but I think the products usually spoke for themselves, so everyone kind of gets that. I have a pretty good idea that I'm like, I think I need it to be dark enough,
right,
to get out the performance that I want. So we come to an agreement.
Right, you get yourself into the right headspace for it. Yeah. Because I can't see you guys going into some regular studio with all these bright lights, trying to really pull off that. Yeah, that wouldn't seem like it would. Now, as far as that, and you were saying you'd played some gigs where things had happened, did you have any issues with that, doing that kind of stuff in that scene, like in this guy's studio? Any spooky or paranormal thing happen?
When I have demoed on my own, prior to the final recordings, sometimes I have noticed things that I don't understand where they come from, like vocalizations or reverberations that I'm like, I don't think I put that there.
Wow.
And sometimes they do sneak onto the final masters here too. But often there is, at least in the beginning stages of things, I think when you start to tap into it, you never really know what you're going to end up with or where it comes from. That's always something I'm excited at the prospect of capturing more.
That would be real interesting to catch something like that. Now, as far as that also, do you guys, I saw online there, obviously on YouTube, some videos that people have, shot of you at shows. Have you got any actual pro shot or actual music videos that you've done? You said you've done some stuff in Graveyard that pertain to the music.
We have some kind of lyric videos that we've put together on our own, but we've got a couple things in the tank right now that were supposed to have been in For the Record released last year, but we kind of had a tragedy strike with our drummer being out of commission for a while, had an injury in his arm, so he wasn't able to really perform or do anything, so we've had to kind of outsource some help, and a lot of the tech side of things kind of went by the wayside just for the time being, but we are actively putting back together our videos for public consumption soon.
As far as videos, I'm just curious because I know bands still do it, but what is the purpose really of doing a video per se? I mean, MTV, those type of formats don't really exist much anymore. Is it just to be out there to show people what the potential live show would be like, to draw them in, or is there another reason for it?
I think that's a big reason for a lot of bands. For me and what we're trying to accomplish, I think it's a good opportunity to show what we're about, what our aesthetics are, what you can expect from the music in large, and just that whole general vibe. Mm-hmm. And really to tell a story to further the music's narrative is really what I want to try to come across.
Right.
So like songs on the record or deal with a lot of particular themes, and I want to make sure that that's like shown first and foremost if we're going to spend the time to make just part of the art project of it all. to me.
Has the band, for these recordings there again, radio's really weird in this town.
True.
Have you gotten any airplay on like college radio or radio of any kind, of internet radio or anything like that?
Yeah, here and there. I know we've gotten some local play on a couple stations. We've connected with some UK stations that some are online, and they've been kind enough to play us and get in the rotation. So that's always exciting to hear. Primarily, you get a lot of internet playlists and a lot of internet, just shuffling through the Spotifys and such.
Right.
But it is not for lack trying, for
Sure.
We have submitted and sent files over, but you never know when it's going to play, if it ever does.
Right, of course. It's the business side of it. Now, you had mentioned some of the clubs that you'd played here. And as a band, have you taken it out on the road in the last few years, anywhere outside of Michigan, New York, any kind of place like that?
Yeah, we've got some more structured plans this year to get on the road and go down a couple week-long excursions around Midwest and hopefully more East Coast, I think, would make sense.
Yeah.
I've done some Northern Michigan dates solo. We've kind of gone down to Ohio. So searching out for really any place that makes sense. But we've been cataloging any bands that have come into town that we've made friends with that they're going to be able to play with us, hopefully in their home cities. So that is our angle.
And what are some of these other bands that you might be referring to that have come in and played with it?
Yeah, friends of ours, Sarah and the Safe Word, originally from Atlanta and now New York. Yeah, we actually collaborated with the singer Sarah on our track Weird Sisters on the record you can hear. So that's definitely a big friend of ours. We've made friends with Charming Disaster. I think they're from New York as well. Bullpup is from Vermont, I think, or Connecticut, maybe Connecticut. And then Ouroboros the Poser from Chicago. I was just over there the weekend and tried to connect, but such as it is, busy time of year.
Right.
Yeah, we're trying to collect a network of spooky inclined bands that we always reach out to.
Is there a decent goth type scene as far as the music scene in Detroit, or do you think that's probably more East Coast, specifically New York, because of the bigger population or whatever?
I think it really wants to be here. We were actually fortunate on it was Skull Fest. I believe it was almost 2 years ago now. But that was the big goth fest for a weekend in Detroit, where they got some out of town acts and like pretty much anybody who's anybody on the Detroit circuit of the darkly inclined DJs and artists and performers that they got together on a fest. So there is a community. It does exist.
And where was that festival at?
It took place at the Russell Industrial Complex.
Oh, okay. Have you guys opened up for any what people would consider national or semi-national acts, whether it be here or out of state?
Yeah, I would say we've played with kind of more dark folk acts like Amigo the Devil, Harley Poe, Will Wood, Tapeworms, Fame. I'd probably put Sarah and Safe Word on that list at some point.
Cool.
But yeah, they're all excellent, just commendable musicians that are doing the stuff that we want to do. We just got off, we had a more folky evening with Tim Berry back at Smalls last weekend, in fact. So that was quite a night.
I imagine it would be. Have you guys, now you say you've recorded all your music yourself and self-produced, mastered most of it. Have you sent it out to any record labels? Is that even something bands do much anymore, let alone goth bands?
There's a lot of labels these days. Hard to know who's the right one in any sense. But I know that we've been kind of pursuing and a little bit of courtship with a couple that friends bands are on. So hard to say if that's anything's going to come of it, but we love the association. So any of our heroes, any of our friends that are out there, just by the sheer notion of what they do and the kind of music that they make, if we feel like we can connect with them and they're on the right label, then that would make sense for us. That would be what we love.
Do you guys, at your shows or on your website, do you have merchandise that you sell? T-shirts, the likes of that? We do. Yeah, we definitely keep our merch stocked for any performances, and we do have a little bit of a lesser variety on our website right now that is able to be purchased. Or you can email us anything that you're aware of, and we'll be happy to oblige. Now, is there any of that merch that's kind of like different? I mean, typically bands will have like their CDs, T-shirts, maybe some bumper stickers. Do you guys, as you know, more or less a goth thing, a little darker, do you have any merch that's a little bit, let's just say, unusual?
Well, we do sell candles.
Oh, okay.
So that'd be our one thing that you don't see a lot.
Yeah.
We try to expand a little bit. We've got candles, we've got your conventional T-shirts and such, but it's all about the artwork on there.
Sure.
To try to make it a little more niche for our audiences.
I thought would be interesting is if you had like a Ouija board, something like that.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of cool.
That is definitely on the docket at some point. I use a lot of Ouija board in our imagery as it is. I put a planchette on my guitar.
Oh, wow.
I think that helps. My pedal board is actually on a Ouija board. Kind of hard to tell, but it's on there. But yeah, we have some planchette, some enamel pins and such. That's all stuff that I like to imagine makes sense for the grander scope of what we do.
Absolutely.
But always trying to expand new ideas. So Ouija boards, tarot cards, it's coming.
Yeah, that seems like that would be a good fit. It would make sense. Now, when you go into venues like Kazoo Cafe or the Logger House, I've been to both those places. It's not a big stage area. Do you have a stage set up for that as far as props that you can still get the effects and the imagery out that you're wanting to? Do you have a smaller version and larger versions that you use?
Yeah, we have to kind of downscale a little bit depending, just kind of get cozy with it on the stage to make sure everybody fit. Primarily, candles are usually non-negotiable.
Oh, okay.
To make sure that those are out there. And then if we're using our own drum kit, I design the heads and stuff to make it look a little more specific to what we do.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Even on our, I try to make anything really can be a canvas in my eyes. I put sheets up on my amplifier and the bass amp and stuff just to make sure that everything looks cohesive.
Now, are you a writer, or not, I shouldn't say a writer, because obviously you're a writer, you write music and lyrics. Are you an artist in any other fashion? I mean, painting, drawing, anything like that?
Yeah, I would say I started out, pencil paper as a kid, and crayons and all that, just ever growing, watercolor, sculpting, anything like that. That's all stuff that I've grown into and enjoy. I do a lot of digital art now too, but yeah, I'm inspired by comic books and movies, and anytime I can kind of express visually, that's all part of my repertoire.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because having certain kind of artwork up on the stage, it seems like it would lend itself to it. Even if you had kind of dark paintings or drawings or whatever around the stage, that could create a little bit more of an ambiance too.
Oh yes.
Well, anyway, man, I'm gonna let you go. I really appreciate talking to you today. You learned a lot of interesting stuff, and I hope you guys have a lot of success. The music that I've heard, and the videos that I've seen seem to really good. I mean, I'm not normally too much into the dark stuff other than like Sabbath and some of those groups, but I can see where you're coming from as far as that, and I hope the scene develops a little bit more. You guys can get out and play a bit more. From what I understand, over in the UK, they have quite a good scene for this too. Have you guys had any plans of maybe going over there in the future?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If as soon as we can, we'd love to do it, because that is definitely a spot that would feel like we really made a dent.
All right, Charles, I'm going to let you go. I really appreciate you talking to me today. And like I said, I wish you guys the best of luck and the best of success. Keep in touch with, the shows that are coming up. I don't get out that much anymore, but this summer I like to get out to the clubs and see bands. And some of the places you mentioned I've frequented before. So anyway, man, thanks so much, and you have a really good evening.
You too. Thank you so much. We'll have a candle with your name on it.
All right, man. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Right.
Take care.
Okay, that was Charles Urban from the band The Picassos, a gothic rock band that uses a lot of stage theatrical imagery, and their music is very dark but insightful and deep. You can check them out on Spotify and the other music services. You can go to the Picassos website and read more about them, check them out there, and real interesting stuff as far as I'm concerned. Well, the other thing I want to mention, of course, is if you're liking these interviews, and I've got a lot coming down the road, I'd really appreciate appreciate it if you could hit the like button on some of these. Maybe leave a comment, even if it's about somebody you'd like me to try and interview or about the interview itself. And maybe if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost any money. It just helps me out in the long run. Well, anyway, with that said, thank you for listening to Motor City Rock Talk. And as always, keep rocking.